All right, well, it works in the rifle. Works in the pistols. What's up, guys? As some of you may have seen on a previous video, my dad and I just went in halves on a reloading kit in an effort to continually have the same load, which it's kind of difficult getting the same box of ammunition off the shelf twice these days. So we figured we'd nip that in the bud and just do it ourselves. Now, as you just saw before this, I did go to the range and I tested out a small batch that I made up to make sure that both me and my dad liked the load that I did. Now, it was a little bit milder than what we've been shooting factory, but I was a little bit nervous about it because I've never done any reloading prior to now, and I didn't really have any kind of guidance other than a little reading and watching a few videos and asking a couple questions. So I was a little nervous, but as you saw, they worked pretty flawlessly in revolver and rifle. I wasn't really worried about accuracy today so much as I was worried about them working, but we each did get pretty good grouping with them. You know, we're going to have to adjust our optics, but they all went to the same place, more or less. So I felt good about it, and I'm going to go ahead and load up a big batch, and I figured I'd bring you along and let you see the process for one of them. So let's get going. Alright, so I've already got my decapping die in here, and I got it all set up to where you want it to be. You'll notice the pin is about 3/16 protruding out of there. And you know, all I really did is raise that ram and threaded this down until it touched. That is going to both deprime it and resize that case. So let me go ahead and get one in the chamber and show you the process. Alright, so I've already got one of my nickel plated. I've already sent them through the tumbler and everything, and we are going to remove that primer and then resize and make sure this is all good to go. Alright, so I'm going to try to show you that primer falling into the bucket. Well, I was hoping you'd be able to see that primer drop, but you didn't. But as you can see, there's no primer left in there, and this has all been resized. Alright, so next I'm going to consult my handy dandy book, and as you can see, the max case length is 1.290. The trim length is 1.280. So now I'm going to measure my case and see where I fall. Alright, so now I'm going to take my calipers and give this thing a measure. Alright, looks like I'm at, I don't know how well the camera's going to see this, 1.285, which is within the parameters of maximum versus minimum, so I'm good to go. Alright, so my next step is going to be to expand the neck just enough to where that bullet will start in there but not drop in. That's going to help guide it through when we go to press that bullet. So I'm going to remove, get that handle out of my way, going to remove this die. And I'm going to install my expanding die. There's a little ram in there that's going to meet the neck, that mouth opening, and just kind of, you know, flare it out a touch. So I'm just going to get that started for now, because I don't know how deep I need to go yet. I'm going to install my cartridge, run it on up and run this down until I feel a little bit of resistance. There's a little resistance, and now what I'm going to do is bring this back on down and just give this little spins. You don't need a whole lot because you don't know how much you're going to be going, so just a little bit of a turn at a time. Pull it out, check it, it's still tight, so I'm going to turn that a little bit more, ram it on home. Not quite there yet. There we go. As you can see, it's just barely starting in there. Now it's ready to be primed and charged. So I'm going to take one of my primers here, and these are the small pistol Magnum primers. I have learned that these are very easy to drop and then you'll never see them again, and they cost too much to lose them. Alright, so now I'm going to drop a primer right down in there. As you can see, it's in there and it is ready to rock and roll. Now this press comes with a different attachment that will kind of mount right there and kind of come down at an angle. The purpose of that is that kicks out and you can just drop a primer in automatically. But since I'm just getting started, I don't have that yet. So I'm just going to drop it in like that, the old-fashioned way. Alright, so now I've got that primer in. I'm going to insert my cartridge. You have to pick it up a little bit. Alright, now that's in there, all I'm going to do is bring it down home. Put a little pressure on it, just a little, to make sure it seats properly. Which, it is in there. Now something I like to do, and like I said, I'm very, very brand new at this, but just to make sure that that is flush and not protruding a little bit, I just sit it on the table and make sure it don't, you know, weeble wobble around a little bit, because I have had a couple of them that I thought were seated properly, but I sit them on the table and, you know, they kind of wobble around a little bit. So whenever that happens, I just stick them back in and, you know, give them a little more push. But that is ready to go. So now it is ready to be charged and loaded. Alright, so as I said in my previous video, this rotor is actually meant for a rifle, so I need to get the pistol rotor. But for the time being, I've been able to finagle it around to get the amount of powder dumping out of it pretty close. So then all I got to do is just, you know, adjust it slightly with my powder trickle. Alright, so I got my scale set up and I've got it zeroed out with that little pan on there. So when I remove the pan, as you can see, it reads negative 192.5. Put the pan back on, back to zero. Let's get some powder on that sucker. Alright, let's see how close we got. Alright, 17.9, which is exactly what I was going for, because with that 125 grain bullet, and I am using IMR 4227, so I'm going to roll down here 125 grain. Where's it at? 4227 IMR 17.9, which is the maximum load for this particular setup, going 1400 foot per second, because we like them a little spicy. So let me get my little tray so I don't make a mess here. put my casing in there, my primed casing. Stick this funnel on top of it. Dump her on in. So now that casing is charged. That is 17.9 grains of IMR 4227. Time for the projectile. Alright, so I am loading up with the Hornady XTP 38 caliber, 125 grain, 357 diameter. Alright, so before I get any further, I'm going to take this back out and put in my seating and crimping die. Now when you're doing several reloads at once, this and the other, the decapping, once you get them to where you want them to be, you're just going to lock them down with that collar. Being I'm only going through the motions for one of them right now, once I got what I need, I just take it out. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this one. Alright, so here is my seating and crimping die. You can see there's a little ram in there that's going to actually push that bullet down into the case. And this also does a roll crimp. So I'm just going to get this started for now. I'm going to go ahead and remove my primer seater because it might get in the way a little bit. I'm going to take my case, stick it back in the shell holder there. I'm going to run it all the way up. Now I'm going to thread this down until I feel that resistance. Once you feel that resistance, that means the crimping portion of the die has made contact with that case neck. Alright, feeling resistance, so I'm going to back this off one turn. Now I'm going to go ahead and tug, snug down this lock. Alright, drop that back down. I'm going to raise this all the way out of the way. I don't want it touching at all right now. Take my shell back. Go ahead and get my bullet started. Stick her back on in there. So now I'm going to raise that back up. Thread this down until you feel that resistance, like you've done, or you, whatever, like we've done with every die so far. I'm going to run that down until I feel a little bit of resistance. There it is. Now I'm going to drop this back down. Small little turns. Just keep repeating that until you get your desired depth. Alright, so the maximum COL, which means cartridge overall length, is 1.590. That's pretty much what I'm going to be going for, somewhere along those lines. So let's get to measuring and do some more pressing. Alright, so before I go any more, I'm going to go ahead and pull this out and measure it. I know I'm nowhere near my depth, but I'm going to measure it anyway. Make sure that's zeroed out. And right now I'm at 1.715, so I got a ways to go. Back to the press. Give those little turns. We'll go ahead and give it another little turn. Alright, so I should be getting close now. 1.638, and like I said, I am going for 1.590. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get this set for 1.590. Alright, 1.590. Now as I go down in increments, I can just stick it in there until it fits. Couple little turns. Very close. I'm gonna do even smaller turns now. Look at there. Perfect fit. 1.590. So now that I've got that pressed to where I want it, I'm going to loosen this back up. Take that all the way out because I don't want to press anymore. Matter of fact, I'm just going to take it completely out. Alright, let's set my now cartridge back in here. Turn until you feel pressure. There's some pressure. And drop that out. Little small turns. You don't want to get too carried away with the crimp. And I'm just going to visually inspect it. I think I can handle a little bit more. Not much. There we go. I'm happy with that. I don't know how well you can see the crimp, but there's a little tiny crimp right there along that, I believe it's called a cantilever, which is basically just crimping grooves. So I'm going to measure it one more time, make sure we didn't deviate from where we were. There we go, perfect fit, 1.590. So there is a 125 grain 357 going 1400 foot per second. So now that we've got that one done, I'm going to go ahead and load up a bunch of them.